Let's explore arrays in JavaScript. Arrays allow us to hold multiple values within one variable. Let's consider a variable of points set to an empty array, which is just a pair of empty brackets. Now let's fill up this array with data. We'll give it 25, 16, 7, 9, and 31. Great. Notice that each new element in the array is separated by a comma until we reach the end. And then we'll want to console.log points to check it out. In our console now, we see 25, 16, 7, 9, and 31. What can we do with this array? And why are arrays useful are questions you might be asking. Well, often in an application, we'll want to store a list of data. Think about a to-do list, for example. Each one of those tasks is unique, but we could represent the entire collection of to-dos that someone has to do within an array. Or consider this very example of points. We have multiple points, which hypothetically could represent the number of points each of the starters on our basketball team in this hypothetical scenario scored within a game. Let's explore some ways we can now interact with arrays through JavaScript methods. For one, we can update the array very easily. Let's suppose I wanted to add a new element to the array. Would I have to redeclare the entire array? No, I could use the array.push method. Let's say someone else scored 8 points. And there we go. We see 6 elements in our array now. Well, what about removing an element? Suppose you wanted to take out the last element rather than push a new element. Well, we can use the pop method. So we'll say var last equals points.pop, which removes the last element in an array and also returns that element to a variable that we assign. So let's console.log points now, as well as last. And boom, we see our shortened array as well as the next element. Now, what about simply accessing elements? Well, it's very similar to how we access data through properties in objects. However, we don't have keys that map these elements to data in order to access them. Luckily, notice that an array has a specific order. So we can access elements within the array by specifying the index or order number of the element that we want. To get the first element, we actually specify with the number 0 because we start counting from 0 in JavaScript. For this reason, we call the first element within an array the 0th element. So to access that code, we can say var first equals points and 0 within brackets. We'll console.log first now and see if we get 25. And there we go, we see 25 in our console. Now you might be wondering why we don't just start with 1 whenever we're counting in an array. Well, most programming languages actually start counting from 0 because of the influence from old C programming languages, which started to do so. So if you go and count from the array starting from the 0th element, you'll find the 0th element, the first element, the second element, the third element, and the 4th element within this points array of length 5. It's one of those things that you have to get used to as you're starting to learn how to program. Alright, let's console.log one more useful property that we have from arrays. We can actually access the length of this array very easily by calling the length property of the array. And there we go, we see 5 elements show up in our console. Awesome! We can now work with arrays in JavaScript as well as use multiple number of helper methods to assist us in manipulating this data type. Let's move on to learning more JavaScript.